There's a storm across the valley. The clouds are rolling in. The afternoon is heavy on your shoulders. There's a truck out on the 4-lane, a mile or more away. The whining of his wheels just makes it colder.
Welcome to Community Forum. Today is February 2nd, 2023. I'm Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your host for Community Forum. And today I have a very special guest and someone who has gone on a very long and difficult journey, which continues to this day. Shayla Rose, 25 years old, and I'm going to read a blurb from her book describing her illness, her condition. It's called Stuck on the Sidelines, and quite a book and quite a story. And it's probably one that most of our viewers have not heard of. I certainly had not heard of this condition. So let me read you the prologue for Stuck on the Sidelines as an introduction. When Shayla Rose was 13 years old, her entire life changed. She suddenly became very sick, forcing her to leave school and the rest of her normal life behind. After visiting countless doctors, including one of the top-rated hospitals in the country, nobody could figure out what was causing Shayla's debilitating symptoms and rapid decline. Unbeknownst to Shayla at the time, she was one of millions of others facing postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, POTS for short, POTS, an invisible chronic illness affecting the autoimmune nervous system. Stuck on the Sidelines gives an inside look into what it's like to have a misunderstood and life-altering medical condition. In her book, Shayla shares her raw and honest struggles with chronic illness and sheds light on this rarely talked about disorder. Welcome, Shayla Rose.
Thank you.
And today we are going to discuss it, okay? And we're going to learn about it. Fascinating story that she has to tell. So let's start with that, the beginning, Shayla. Tell me a little bit about what it was like and what happened when you were 13.
So prior to being 13, I was, going to school, and I was a typical, normal, healthy kid. And one day in September, I woke up one morning to get ready for school, and I couldn't get out of bed. I had so many symptoms that were coating my body, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was walking over the threshold into a world of chronic illness. And what would follow would be months and years of my illness getting worse and better and worse and better.
And what were some of those symptoms?
I had an exhaustion that I couldn't escape from. I felt like I was being weighed down by sandbags. I also was incredibly dizzy. And I had a symptom that a lot of people don't understand very well. It's called depersonalization. So basically, I felt like I was dreaming even though I was awake.
My goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
And I think you told me that you had problems walking, that you couldn't walk?
Yeah. So at 13, it was very difficult for me to walk because of my dizziness, but also my exhaustion and just all of the symptoms combined, really. So just a simple walk to the bathroom was like the most physically exhausting task that I could endure in a day.
Did you end up in a wheelchair by any chance?
Not at that time, no. Later on, when I was 18, I had to use a walker to get around. So yeah.
And you talked about your normal life being interrupted. Talk about that. You couldn't go to school?
Yeah, so at 13, I was unable to go to school, and eventually got tutored at home. So I was unable to go to school. A lot of things I couldn't do anymore. I couldn't hang out with my friends. I definitely went through a period of grief at that time because everything that I had ever known, I could no longer do.
And 13 is such a vulnerable age. That's for a young woman. It's puberty. It's changing in your bodies anyway. Did anybody discover that maybe your approaching puberty had an impact, or did it trigger this autoimmune problem?
Yeah, so statistically that actually happens a lot with POTS, the illness that I have. 1 in every 100 teenagers could develop POTS. That's the statistic for it. Yep. And although POTS can affect you at any age, it's not just a teenage condition. Largely it affects people who are 13 and very young. Typically it's like women in childbearing age. So, teenager to like mid-40s is usually the onset for it.
And do elderly also, are they affected?
I believe that they can also get it as well, but it's just more common in that age range. And it's important to note that men can get it too.
Men can get it too, okay. And do they know the cause?
There's a lot of things that can cause it. There's more research that needs to be done. But certainly puberty was something I think for me that caused it. Other events like life events, stressful life events like a car accident or childbirth or something like that, a concussion, for instance, all of those things have been known to trigger it for people as well.
So the puberty cause would be the additional hormones that are racing through a young girl's body, right?
Potentially, yeah. There's also a link to connective tissue disorders causing POTS. So as an example, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is another condition that's not widely recognized. The acronym for that is EDS. And that affects the collagen in your body, and POTS can be a result of that too. So in my case, it's very likely that that component has a effect in why I have POTS.
We first met at one of my very favorite stores and that my grandchildren benefit from, and that is Merry-Go-Rounds. It's an upscale secondhand children's boutique. It also has new clothes and toys and books, but people generally go in there because the store is just filled with clothes from infants, newborns to size 12, and for boys and girls. And you were the cashier. And I was there. We were doing story time with Aubrey-Ann Buckley, her first children's book, and about kindness and spreading the spark of kindness. And you were there, and we chatted, and we'd met before because you'd cash me out sometimes, and discovered that you were a poet also, besides having this debilitating condition. So I'm wondering, if you start feeling dizzy, can you lie on the floor at merry-go-rounds, or do you go in the back room?
So thankfully it hasn't happened to me yet while I'm working. But I do have a stool behind my cash register, which is nice. It's a good bonus of working there. They give you a seat, which is good. So it hasn't happened to me yet, but a lot of the reason why it hasn't is because I prepare so well before I work. I drinking a lot and eating and stuff, so that hopefully I can keep my body in check. But it's also important to note that people with POTS, 25% of us are too disabled to go to work or school.
Really?
So just the fact that I am your cashier at Merry-Go-Rounds is, a nod to how much progress I've made in the past few years to be able to have that. And the people at Merry-Go-Rounds have been fabulous to me and very understanding and accommodating to me as well.
Yeah, well, they're wonderful people.
Yes.
Beth and Melissa, mother-daughter team, just wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you wear a mask, and that's obvious, isn't it, because of this autoimmune condition that you endure.
Yeah, I think I'm usually the only one there that's wearing one, but yeah.
So it wasn't until I said to her, to Shayla, I can't understand you with the mask on.
Mm-hmm.
And she carefully took it off, and I got to see her very pretty face.
Oh, thank you.
And so tell me, did this condition prevent you from going, educating yourself beyond high school?
So my journey in high school was very unique. I think that the system, as far as invisible illness goes, I think the system could do better.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get the appropriate accommodations that I needed back then. So I actually left high school early at 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to begin my journey of getting my GED. And beyond that, I actually did go and take some online college courses. I did some ASL, which was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just kind of focused on my health, because when I was 18, I got so sick again, perhaps even worse than when I was 13. And that kind of just changed my focus. It went from, okay, I need to survive and I need to give my body the care that it needs so that I can hopefully hold a job in the future and work on that.
And but you obviously are extraordinarily intelligent, and you want to probably devour online courses. So do you plan on a little bit at a time starting that process again?
I certainly wouldn't close the door to it. Presently, I'm not working on that. I'm just kind of happy just like working at merry-go-rounds, and I'm very extroverted, so I love talking to people, and just focus on my writing too.
Yeah. Now, the writing, how has that, and by the way, this is not the only book, Stuck on the Sidelines, by Shayla Rose. Rose is not your middle name, it's your last name, right? Yes.
It's my pen name, yes.
Oh, it's your pen name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, didn't know that. But she is a poet. So why don't you read the introduction to this book? It's the dedication, which is a poem. And then we're going to introduce your book of poems, which has recently been published.
So the dedication page inside of Stuck on the Sidelines does a really good job explaining why I wrote this book. And it's written in the form of a poem, so here it is. This book is for you. Yes, you, the one with the heavy heart. I know that you're worried. You've had a rough start. I wrote this for you, for the ones alone, for the ones in the hospital and the ones at home, for the ones in bed who cannot walk, for the ones who are too sick to talk, for the ones who are crying in fear, for the ones who have no more tears, for the ones who are caught in self-blame, for the ones whose illness has caused them much shame. I know dysautonomia from the inside. I can feel its impact. From that I can't hide. It's invisible, even though it's very real to me. The symptoms nobody else can see. I know what it looks like. I can see its face. It can be every age and every race. I know what it sounds like. I've heard it before. It's the voices of millions. It's a silenced roar.
Oh my goodness. That's a very powerful poem.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. So you have had a journey that has been really impacted your health and your everyday life, but somehow you have endured and you've prevailed. And do you feel that the writing of this book and the writing of all the poetry that you do has helped you to escape some of these symptoms?
I think that it's definitely been really healing for me to write. Writing Stuck on the Sidelines is really, for me, it was a healing process, because for the first time I went through and reviewed everything that had happened to me, and that felt really like therapeutic for some reason. Just being able to backtrack and see, okay, how did I get here, and just kind of reliving all of that. It was difficult at times for sure, but it was also very healing. And then writing in general has always been a really good outlet for me. It's a great way for me to express myself. It comes really natural to me. So my poetry came out of, that time of being really sick too. A lot of the poems, like the chapters in Stuck on the Sidelines, actually begin with a poem. And a lot of those poems were either written at the time that chapter is placed in, or they were written about that time. And so as you can imagine, that was also very important to me,
Sure.
as an outlet.
And when was that book published?
This book was published in 2019.
And it was written finished in 2018?
So it was published in 2019. I started writing it 3 years prior to that. It took me 3 years to like totally write it all and edit, and I self-published, so.
Right, so you were 18 when you started writing it?
Yep, and I finished when I was 21.
Wow. Okay, and it's got a great photo on the front. You're sitting.
Do you know where this was taken?
Frothingham.
Yep.
Frothingham Park.
Yep,
Of
very
course.
good.
I know it well because as a child, I ran that track and played softball on the diamond there and field hockey.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I always wanted to play. But like all the girls in high school were playing field hockey and I was too sick to play. So I'm like, I'm jealous. I'm so glad you were able to do that.
Yeah. I was a forward, and my cousin Linda Swanberg, who seemed to be a foot taller than I, was the center.
Oh, okay.
And so she was wonderful. We were a powerful forward line, let's put it that way.
That's so nice that you have that memory with her too, though.
Yeah, I do. So, but look at this photo. You'll see the photo. There she is, sitting on the bench. Actually, it's the cement seat at Frothingham Memorial Park, and looking out and stuck on the sidelines as a spectator. Okay.
If you notice, there's a number on the back of my shirt that I'm wearing in that photo, which is 13.
13.
Which represents the time where I entered the world of chronic illness. So
yes,
that was there's a lot of little details that you'll discover in both of my books like that.
That's great. And so this particular ribbon and this color, what color would you call this?
Turquoise.
Turquoise, okay. And is that's the color of a ribbon that the condition has adopted?
Yep, so POTS is a form of dysautonomia, and dysautonomia's ribbon color is turquoise. So
I see. Okay. And have you met other people who with this condition?
I have, yeah, and it was totally life-changing and life-saving, I would add, like during that time where I could actually meet people who endured the same symptoms as I did. And I first met somebody when I went to a support group. I was 19 at the time, and I went to my first support group. It was held in Rhode Island by an organization, the Dysautonomia Support Network, and it was a Christmas party at the time. And I marked it on my calendar, and I counted down the days, and I went in there, and I actually just cried. I went into the room. It was a Christmas party, and I saw this girl with her friend, and she elevated her legs on a chair, and I immediately recognized that she had POTS like I did. And I just started bawling. I was sitting with my parents on the other side of the room, and I start crying, and my parents were like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, I've never met anybody before that feels the same way I do. And we became friends, and we still communicate. And since then, I went to several other support groups, and also book events. I've met some other people who have it. So
Wonderful. So where can one purchase Stuck on the Sidelines?
So I have a website. It's inspirepots.com. And if you go on there, you'll find both of my books.
Okay, it's inspirepots, POTS.com.
Yep.
Wonderful. So tell us about the other book. What's the title of that?
My second book is called A Rose's Reflection.
And tell us a little bit about how that came about.
So A Rose's Reflection is my poetry collection. And I've been writing poetry ever since I was a teenager, so quite a while. And it came about into the form of a book because I had lost one of my friends. One of my friends, her name was KJ Sariski, and she had the same illness that I did. Hers was a lot more progressed, and unfortunately, she passed away from it. And she was one of my biggest encouragers, and during my early days of grieving when she first passed away, I just felt like I needed to finally stop postponing the idea of writing a book and a poetry book and finally just do it. So I remember being so sad and just taking all my poems and organizing them and trying to figure out how do I make this into a book. And I dedicated this book to her when it did come out. And so yeah, there's 8 sections and there's 130 poems.
Oh my goodness, 130. And what are the different sections?
So there's sections on nature, childhood, reflections, illness, grief. There's some like prayers in there too, some like more faith-based poems. There's also a really silly section too with just like totally random poems that are really imaginative.
Mm-hmm. And your dedication to her, is there a dedication in there?
There is, yep. Yep, so this dedication actually is not in the form of a poem, but I can read it to you. Mm-hmm. So the dedication says this: dedicated to my sweet friend, Kira J. Sariski. Sometimes in life, you meet people who teach you how to live, the ones who are built from the stardust and whose wide-eyed gaze for the mundane galaxy enlightens those around them. The ones who live in the moment, the ones who are fearless, full of life, and have a touch more wit and spunk than the rest of us. I met KJ in a small white church. We were both teenagers then, dealing with illnesses that stole our adolescence and left us with a new normal that was anything but. We found understanding in each other, compassion, and support. She and I faced a similar battle, and hers took her far too soon. She was the type of person who was always there, a text away. Even amid her toughest battles, she was always the first one to tell a joke, share a quirky story, show a smile, or give advice. KJ was the strongest and most selfless girl I have ever known, and it's her that I am honored to dedicate this book to. KJ, your love of life, perfectly timed humor, immeasurable talents, and strong faith continue to inspire me every day. Your friendship was a great blessing to me. Thank you for being one of my biggest cheerleaders in this race of life. You were always so supportive of me and all of my endeavors. This book is for you, my friend. May you fly high in heaven in the arms of Jesus. Save a special spot up there for me, okay? May your legacy and spirit continue to live on forever, and may all those who read this book be inspired to live their lives a little more like you did, without fear and with a selfless and compassionate desire to always lend a loving hand to those who need it. And this angel picture is on the opposite side of her dedication, and KJ actually sketched that for me, unknowing at the time that, she would pass away, but she sketched this for me a couple of years before she passed away.
Oh my goodness.
So I knew immediately that had to be included in the book to honor her.
Wonderful. So obviously you get a lot of joy from writing and expressing yourself. Mm-hmm. And people who are reading these poems are going to likewise have great joy. But the most important part is it's really helped your healing.
Yeah, it definitely has. Having a way of expressing myself. And also, it's something that hasn't been taken away from me. Like, there's a lot of things that I get into, like hobbies and stuff, and then I quickly learn I can't, can't do them anymore for physical reasons. So having something that's always available to me to be able to write, and that's just been a constant in my life. So
that's part of your personal life that you treasure. What sorts of things a young lady like of your age cannot do and cannot participate in your personal life?
So anything physically anything physically strenuous, hiking is one thing, walking. Actually, riding my bike, I love riding my bike, and it's something that there's been times throughout the years I haven't been able to do that, but I've gradually built up my distance, so I'm now at like 3.5 miles, which isn't very long for most people, but I do it and I'm like exhausted after, and but I'm happy because a few years back I could barely walk, so to be able to ride my bike that far is really exciting. But yeah, so things like hiking and walking long distances are hard for me. It's kind of different for everybody too, so I have my challenges, but someone with POTS might have totally different ones too.
Yes, and maybe even more severe than yours.
Yeah, And there's things that I avoid doing too, like elevators. I do not like elevators at all. They make me so dizzy. So yeah, it's like weird sensory things sometimes too.
Now, does this condition limit your friendships?
I would say when I was younger, it certainly did, because most teenagers find their friends in school. So by being tutored at home and then homeschooled for a time, I wasn't able to be in that social dynamic anymore. But now that I'm older and, you know, past the age of 18, I've found connections in other ways. And so, yeah, so now I don't feel at all limited with friendships or anything.
Mm-hmm. So do you go out with gals and?
Yeah, and I'm also really involved in my church. And so that's kind of a cool social way, you know, social thing too.
Right. You mentioned you go to the fellowship church.
Yeah, I love the fellowship. It's awesome.
Okay, so you're a real Easton girl.
I am.
You're a townie.
I am.
Like me.
I'm proud of it.
And proud.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that that the school system didn't give you what you needed at the time you needed it. But you certainly survived and prevailed.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is your vision for the future?
Continuing to spread awareness for POTS is very important to me. This illness is invisible and it's under-recognized, and I have definitely seen the effects of it not being recognized, you know, particularly in the medical community, going to doctors where they don't understand it. So my mission in the future going forward is to just keep spreading awareness about it, educating people, doing book events, and hopefully also write another book in the future.
Yes, and appearing on this program, Community Forum, because I, for one, advanced in years as I am, have never heard of it. So I want to thank you so much. But before you go, there's a poem that you mentioned was one of your favorites in your poetry book. You want to read it?
Yeah, this poem, I really like it. I think it's one of the more reflective poems that I've written. It's called The Good Old Days. I also think that people can relate to it, like no matter who you are. So it's called The Good Old Days, and here it is. Everyone I've ever known tells me about the good days, the old days back when, the times when life was simpler and funnier and nothing compares to then. So I stopped and I sat with it. I let it make its mark. Time, you see, time is a spark. It's here for a short wink, and it's gone so fast. Time, it's something we can't outrun or outlast. It chases me sometimes, and sometimes it seizes. Time does whatever time pleases. But what if the good days were now, today? What if this moment is my life's brightest bouquet? My good old days could be happening now, but perhaps I'm overlooking them somehow. Maybe the mundane is the remarkable, the humdrum the notable. Maybe the dinner conversations will be the most quotable. Maybe the soundtrack of the good old days is in my childhood home, the dog barking, my parents speaking, and the landline ringtone. The golden sun shining through the fence, the lawnmower running, the smell of fresh cut grass. Maybe these are the good old days, the days I wish could last. An afternoon with friends, playing games beneath the summer sky. I'll miss those times when they've all gone by. Maybe the people, the ones I hold so dear, make it feel like the good days because they're here. Maybe these are the days I'll look back at and think, man, those days went by in a blink. What if the good days are happening now? They could be here today. What if the little things you overlook suddenly went away? Did the good old days happen only when we are young? Are we happiest then? Do they only happen once, or can the good days happen again? I'm soaking it in, the sights, the sounds, the joys, the pleasures. They are the root of my life's greatest treasures. The good old days, a fleeting place in time. The good old days, I think I'm living mine.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. How beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I hope maybe we'll have you on again and just have a poetry reading.
Oh, I would love that.
Okay. Thank you, Shayla Rose, for being my special guest today. You certainly are a special person who has given so much of your inner joy and your inner struggles in your poetry to us. So we thank you for that, and we look forward to many more poems. And again, would you show us the title of the book, and what is it?
So it's called A Rose's Reflection.
A Rose's Reflection. And that has a double meaning, doesn't it?
It does. I want to see if you know where this was taken, this photo. This is also an Easton One location.
Oh, is it the pool at the high school?
Nope, it's the town pool.
Oh, the town pool.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, A Rose's Reflection does have a double meaning. It's, you know, you'll notice on the cover it's me staring at my reflection, and really that's symbolic of me looking at my body and just having, like, you know, sorting out the complicated relationship that I have with it. And together but yet one. You know, separated but yet one, I mean.
Yeah. Wow. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
And thank you for enlightening us about this very rare condition, which is somehow no longer very rare.
It's rarely diagnosed, but statistically not rare.
Right. So, and to the viewing audience, I hope that you have enjoyed this program, you have learned a great deal, and that you will pass on this knowledge to your friends and especially your doctors. Let them know about POTS, P-O-T-S. I'm going to read what that stands for. Postural orthostatic tachycardia. So that last word shows that it affects the heart, doesn't it?
Yep. So typically my heart gets really fast.
I see. And so you're on medication for that?
I am, yep.
Okay.
It feels like you're running a marathon.
Okay. All the best to you, Shayla.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this program. We certainly have enjoyed presenting it to you. Until next time, Priscilla Almquist-Olsen saying, be well.